Okay. It is, I believe it's Wednesday the 20th where you are. It's already the 21st here. I'm starting tonight from Germany. This is Sahavas for everyone on Baba Zoom. Vanessa Weichberger is my co host. I'm Laurent Weichberger. And today we have a very special guest, Jack Becker. For those who don't know Jack, I'll say a few words and then let him say a few words of introduction. I first met Jack many years ago now, Jack, in Chicago at his family home. I think he was less than 10 years old. How were you? How old were you?
Yeah, I think 7.
Seven. And so Jack did not start in a Baba family, but I'll let him explain all that. And recently came to Baba. So, with those words, and Vanessa and I have questions for you. Would you like to say a few words of introduction about yourself, Jack, for those who don't know you?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. Um, so I've been introduced to the Baba community in the last few years, and I guess I first heard Meher Baba's name in 2016, and it took another 6 years probably before I dedicated my life to him, and I'm feeling lucky and grateful to be able to say that, you know, I see Baba as my master, and I think of him as often as possible, and it helps me get through a lot of hard times. It also, I mean, I don't know how things work really, but it also feels like it leads to extra challenges because those can be gifts. Um,
Beautiful.
yeah, I think I have something to say about that when we get into the pilgrimage talk at the beginning of the pilgrimage.
You can start right now. You can roll right into that. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I may as well. So at the beginning of my pilgrimage to Baba's Samadhi in Mehrabad, um, I felt like I got this parting gift from Baba by having my flight canceled. So I was supposed to arrive in Mumbai with a full day of relaxing at the hotel before we set off for Mehrabad, and I was looking forward to it, expecting to relax and go out to a nice dinner or something, hang out by the pool. And so my first flight got canceled, and it was very chaotic, but I decided to look at it as a gift from Baba, like a parting gift for my pilgrimage, saying, here's some struggle to help you stay focused. And I ended up arriving in Mumbai 24 hours after I was supposed to, and it worked out great because I missed all the leisure activities, and I felt like it was Baba's way of telling me, you're here for a reason, and so pay attention. You don't need leisure. And I think that was a good way. Yeah, I think that was a good way to start the pilgrimage. I think it set the tone for for um. What does he say when you're here with me? I want you to be focused on being here with me, right? Something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we could always go back and find those quotes. Baba had lots of quotes put up during the Sahavases that he would have about reminding people, don't think about your home life and work, like really be present, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So let's go back a little bit, and then Vanessa, don't forget, I want you to also ask questions. Let's go back a little bit to before you left, because I love that parting gift of refocusing you on the pilgrimage. But let's rewind a little bit before you left on your
Yeah.
pilgrimage for Mehrabad. What inspired your trip to Mehrabad in the first place? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Um, well, Laurent introduced me to Meher Baba, and it took several years, as I was saying before I started to see all the value in Baba, and recognize him as the avatar. Um, my background is in science, and um, I think I've always been a seeker of truth, and one day, my dad, who has been friends with Laurent as long as I've known him, says to me that Laurent's going to be visiting. So I thought, well, Laurent sent me a copy of Discourses, so I think I'll look over that book, flip to a random page or read the back or something, just to I'm going to be seeing him, just to have something to talk about, right? And the words infinite oneness sort of lodged into my mind. And as a student of math, uh, those words together sort of, challenge my concepts and how I understand reality. And that was the beginning of it for me. And, I, um, Laurent visited and we chatted about it. And the more we talked about it, the more I felt like, wow, I need to keep reading these books because there's more here. And the more I read Baba, the more convinced I was that there was more to reality than is possible to understand. So I
That's a
kept,
great that's a great thing to say. And the infinite oneness came from something you read in Discourses, correct?
yeah, that's right, from Discourses.
So go ahead. You were saying something.
Yeah, well, I guess before I'll just briefly mention that that's a theme that came up a lot during our pilgrimage, was not trying to understand everything. Don't try to understand me, just love me. And understanding has no meaning. Those were kind of our catchphrases throughout the pilgrimage. So that was nice.
Yeah, beautiful.
And what led to the pilgrimage was Laurent told me that he had this inspiration to invite Baba lovers to go on this pilgrimage with him. And gosh, you must have told me at least 6 months before we left, but I feel like longer than that.
It was a year.
It was a year. Yeah, right. It was a whole year for me to think about it. And I wasn't sure I was going to do it. I was pretty sure, but my wife and I talked about it back and forth a lot, and eventually we decided that I should definitely go. And it was really challenging because my wife Chelsea, her mother had brain cancer, and so it was hard to think about the future and planning for that. And well, so eventually I decided to book the flights after talking with Chelsea. Um, and shortly after that, her mother passed away, unfortunately, and it's been really hard. And but Chelsea assured me that I should still do the pilgrimage, and I brought Liz's ashes with me and spread them in various places that were important to Baba, and I feel great that I was able to do that. And Liz, Chelsea's mom, read Discourses and God Speaks. Um, I suppose she had already gotten sick when I started thinking about Baba constantly. So that's when I, handed her the books, and in case she was interested. And she watched some Baba videos with me as well. And it was funny. She read God Speaks much faster than I read it. And I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "Yep, it all makes sense." And I just thought that was so cool because when I read it, I have to wrestle with most of the words before they make any sense to me.
Well, and I, from my experience, because I spoke to her, she seems to have come to Baba right before she passed away.
That was my experience of it as well.
It's an extraordinary story. Extraordinary. Okay, Vanessa, did you have anything, or should we
Yeah, no,
keep
I
on?
have a quick question. So, we've had you on our podcast and you were sharing, your experience of Baba then. And I always like to capture what people, their impression of Baba and how and their relationship to Baba before going on the pilgrimage to Mehrabad, and the difference between the two experiences.
That's a great question. You understand what she's asking, Jack?
Yeah, for my sort of pre-pilgrimage and post-pilgrimage relationship with Baba, right? So the first thing that comes to mind before the pilgrimage, I um I was going through some challenges, as we do as Baba lovers, and eventually started this practice of laying perfectly still on my back before I go to sleep and focusing entirely on Baba's face and just imagining Baba's face however it came to me. And so I started doing this practice every night before going to sleep, focusing on Baba's face and imagining it, all the different, ways I've seen his face. And that started to help me, in my life, or I assume that's why my life started to feel like, a bit more, um, a bit more lubricated, I guess. Things just kind of flowed more easily in my life, and I attributed it to that, and the timing lined up. And so then when we were in Mehrabad, um, without thinking about it as much, I saw Baba's face, in my peripheral vision, just kind of all over the place throughout most of the pilgrimage. And I talked to Laurent about this, and he said, before the pilgrimage, you did things a certain way, and now you're here with Baba, and you don't have to um, try so much, or you don't have to worry about these things. Something like that, he said to me. That's how I remember it, and I remember, really appreciating that, and so I guess that's the first thing that comes to mind as the difference is, uh, and now that I'm talking about it, I'm remembering a session that happened, like a group meeting while we were there, on effort and grace.
Yeah. At
And
Mehrabad.
yeah, and I guess one way to put the difference between before and after would be effort and grace. Like, leading up to the pilgrimage was a lot of effort, and being there was a lot of grace.
That's so beautiful, Jack. I witnessed the effort. I did. I did. I saw the arc of your effort. And so let's talk about that, because we arrived together at Mehrabad, didn't we?
Yeah.
So can I ask, what was your first impression of Mehrabad and your first experiences of that before we get into the samadhi, the initial experience?
Okay. Because when you first asked me, that's the first thing I remember is the
You can,
samadhi.
you can
Except,
jump to the samadhi. That's fine.
well, I remember checking in, going through the security and all that. That was interesting. Um, Sort of just felt like eager to get in there and get started, but it was a nice experience. Um, yeah, that's really the first thing that I remember
Jack,
is
what year was this?
this was just in July this year. Thanks
Yep,
for
we're
asking.
getting fresh off the boat.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so we checked in, we got you all settled. Then I think the same day we went to the samadhi, right?
Yeah, I think almost immediately. Daniel, who was the other pilgrim that went with us, it was the three of us. He he had not slept since he arrived in Mumbai, so he went to sleep, and Laurent and I went to Samadhi. And yeah, I guess, for lack of a better word, uh, it was an incredible experience.
Incredible is a
Um,
great word. Can you share more about why you felt it was incredible?
well, it was a long walk over to the Samadhi, not a very long walk, but it was, this long straight path. And I don't know, there's always something about being able to look down a long straight path that you're about to walk down that comes with a certain kind of feeling. And so we walked down that path, and I mean, being surrounded by nature like that, and animals, all the cows and must have been other animals too, goats and things.
Yeah.
And all the people. That was the other thing that struck me, was the Baba lovers at the retreat. Just everyone you walked by would smile and say Jai Baba, and that was a novel experience for me. I don't unfortunately have a lot of Baba lovers in my life, so for the first time ever, I was surrounded by Baba lovers all saying Jai Baba every time I saw them.
I think you were saying Jay Baba too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, another thing I remember is there's a part of the path where there are these posts to keep motor vehicles out. I assume that's what it's for.
Yeah.
And just as we walked past those, this big gust of wind came and blew my hat off, and it was so windy after that, and we stopped talking to each other, and uh it was a magical experience like nothing else. And it just felt, that feeling of traveling around the world, and for this, because I knew that's what I was here for, is to see the samadhi. And that feeling of having traveled around the world, and that whole experience I went through with the flight being canceled and wondering if I was going to be able to book another flight, which I had to do. I ended up canceling with that airline and getting a different airline, and all of a sudden I'm there and not thinking about any of that stuff, obviously, just experiencing, the feeling of being here to be with Baba. Ugh, man.
So let's talk a little bit about being with Baba there. We went to the Samadhi more than once during the pilgrimage, right?
Yeah, we
And
did.
and can you share anything about from the first day and the first experiences of the Samadhi, and then over the course of the pilgrimage?
Yeah.
Did you have the same experience at the Samadhi, or was there some variation in your experience?
Yeah, definitely some variation. The first experience I had, I would say, was also probably the strongest experience. And when we went, it was kind of rainy. I think as soon as we got under the awning, it started pouring rain. And so we stayed there for a long time. I don't remember how long, but we just kept taking turns going back and forth into the samadhi, and there was maybe one other guy doing the same thing, and we were all just cycling through. And each time you go in, since there's only two guys waiting to go in, and they both keep going in as long as they want, you go in there as long as you want. And so laying face down on the ground and just feeling I remember Vanessa telling me this feeling of being crushed, and that's definitely part of it. You just kind of that that's a good way to put it, this feeling of being crushed and almost like you're being eaten. And that was one of the lines in my head, was that that quote from Baba about he's like a lion that people keep in a cage, and he wants us to open the cage. And so that was kind of one of the meditations I was doing, was picturing my head being eaten by a lion and trying to imagine what that would feel like. And that's Baba eating my head. And it's kind of morbid, but I figured I'd share it anyway,
I
because
love that. I love it.
even though it's recording, maybe that's when I should have done before the recording started.
No, that's it. No, Baba would love hearing that, I'm sure, because he literally said he wanted us to open that cage door and feed ourselves to the lion by entering the cage.
Yeah,
And I think when you enter the samadhi like you did, my feeling is you put yourself in the cage with Baba.
yeah, and to jump ahead, that since then, being back from the pilgrimage has felt a lot like the heat being turned up. Kind of feels like Bob was saying, okay, you're giving yourself to me. I'm going to eat your ego. I'm going to give you all the things that you can barely handle. And from the moment I got home, it was chaos.
So you can tell that there was something happening. It felt like a continuum of Baba working in your life.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And the feeling of like, wow, I need to cling to Baba more than ever because
Mhm.
of that turning up the heat.
That's incredible. Do you want to talk more about Maribot, or should we shift gears and talk about Marizot?
Well, the other thing I would say about, because you asked me if the feelings changed as we went to the Samadhi more
Yep.
times.
Yep.
So two other details that I'd point out is one of the times we went there, I was happy to sit. I got this spot on the rug right outside the entrance, and I was happy to sit there without feeling like getting back in line because I just felt like with everyone that was there. And that was a great experience without feeling the need to continue to go into the Samadhi. And then
You
the
want to talk
other,
more about that experience? Was that the one I witnessed?
yeah, yeah, it was a bit of an out of body experience, I think. So I sat there for a long time and was still. And I remember hearing or maybe reading, it's hard to remember all the details of our memories sometimes, but this idea that you should be still if you're going to meditate, to be perfectly still. Something I read from Baba about meditating. And so I was sitting still and looking at the rug in front of me, and that phenomenon I described earlier was happening, where in my peripheral vision I could see Baba's face, and there was a lot of little Baba faces all in the pattern of the rug. And the feeling that came with that was the feeling of like being a child in your family home, during a holiday, something like that, where you just everything is taken care of and you're just sitting in awe of, your parents and people that take care of you. And that was kind of the feeling that came with this experience. And so I was holding myself still, but I also started to sink into myself. And because I was holding myself still, the sinking was very gradual and I could feel it. And there was sort of this feeling like, well, I don't want to resist. So I held myself as still as I could without resisting this slow sinking. And that was again an experience that I don't remember how long it was for, but it felt like a
I
very
was there.
long time.
Yeah, I was there. It was a long experience. It was at
And
least half an hour.
and by the end of it, my legs were completely numb, and I had to unfold them and let them come back to life a little bit before I could stand up. But that was a great experience, and I think it was that day that I was talking with some other pilgrims, and out of the corner of my eyes, I saw what looked like Baba coming out of the shower. Baba in his garb when he's bathing the musts, and that's what it looked like to me. And then when I looked, instead of out of the periphery, I looked to focus on him, and it was another pilgrim. But when I thought I saw Baba out of my peripheral vision, it was like my heart skipped a beat. It was a wild experience.
You were telling me about your Baba experiences almost every day. Baba was just all around. It was a very
Yes,
rich and fruitful trip at Maribot.
it absolutely was. And I wanted to ask you for a reminder what he said about that he would be in Maribot in that area and around his samadhi for 100 years or something like that.
Yes, 100 years as if he's physically present.
Yeah. Yeah, when you told me that, it made sense, because that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
Obviously, I don't know what it's like to be in the physical presence of Baba other than the
I think you might.
experience.
I think you might know. Vanessa, you have any question about the Maribod part before we skip to
No,
Marizod?
but it just came to me that I thought it'd be worth sharing about the Samadhi and Baba being present. Remember the story, Laurent, of the gentleman coming to Baba to
That
tell that
story?
one? Yeah, that one's great.
You want me to tell that?
Yeah.
I'll try to make it short, but I think I told Jack this too, but there was a guy who was a neighbor to Baba lovers in India. So every time they'd go to Mehrabad, they'd say to the neighbor, "Hey, we're going to Mehrabad. Do you want to join us?" And he'd always say, "No, I'm not interested in Meher Baba and all this, And it's okay. So then they'd go to Mehrabad, they'd have their incredible time with Baba, and they'd come home. And then next time they'd go to Mehrabad, they'd say to their neighbor, "Hey, we're going to Mehrabad. Do you want to come with us?" And he was like, "No, I don't know why you keep asking, all this kind of stuff." And then eventually they said to him one day, "Hey, we're going to Mehrabad. Do you want to join us?" And he's like, "Okay, I'll come." So then he went with them, and they showed the Samadhi, like, here's Samadhi, here's Baba. And he went in and he had such an incredible experience at the Samadhi for the very first time that he went back on the end of the line. And then it was a longer queue back when they were going. Jack and I had almost nobody in front of us there was times where there was nobody but me and Jack at the Samadhi. It was incredible. But this guy had a line, so he would go to the back of the line and then wait and wait and then go in, and then he'd go to the back of the line, and he'd just do this all day long. And then eventually they said to him, "Hey, we're going home." And he was like, "What? I don't want to go home." And then they're like, "No, but the bus is leaving. Come on, we have to go." So then he was like, okay. So then he goes down to the bus and he put one foot on the bus and died before he even got fully on the bus. He died at Mehrabad trying to get onto the bus to leave. Is that the story, Lo?
That's a great story. That's a different one, but that's an amazing story. I didn't know that story.
Which story were you thinking?
Well, I was just thinking of the power of, and I think it's a good reminder to ask for help or ask, if you have any.
That story. Well, we'll tell that at the very end. Let's do more, Jack.
Yes.
Okay. So then, Jack, more about Mehrabad, or should we shift to Marizod?
Well, the last thing I was gonna say about Mehrabad was the queue for Silence Day, waiting, and that's what I tell everyone here at home when they ask about my pilgrimage. That's always the first highlight, is waiting for 3 hours in a line where everyone is silent and no one's looking at their phones, and you're just standing there waiting. And except for the little kids running around, they sometimes talk, but then their older siblings tell them not to.
And what was that experience like? How did that feel?
It felt great, because that feeling that I have nothing to do today other than stand in this 3-hour line and just look around at all these Baba lovers doing the same thing. And at the same time, it felt a little bit like that crushing feeling, because you're just standing there silent with nothing to do, waiting in this line. So that, of course, is going to challenge a person's ego.
That's incredible, Jack. All right, let's skip over to the next scene of the pilgrimage. We decided, you and Daniel and I, that it was time for us to visit Marizod, right? Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
So can you tell a little bit about us going to Marizod and your experience of Marizod?
Yeah. So for me, one of the highlights of Marizod was sitting in Mandali Hall with Devana. And I think it was the first day of pilgrim season. And so Devana was talking about that, like, this is my first day of the pilgrim season. So forgive me if I don't remember everything. I'm out of practice and all that.
And she ended up doing a great job.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, one of my favorite things that she says was that because we had been talking about the avatar weaknesses that each avatar has. We had been talking about that on the pilgrimage. And we had been saying that Baba says, each avatar makes some mistake. And so I asked Divana about that, and she said, well, he didn't say mistake, he said weakness. Each avatar has a weakness, and it's because they're so perfectly human, and humans are flawed. And so since an avatar is actually a human, they have to have a weakness. Whereas a perfect master is only pretending to be a human, so they don't need to have a weakness. And I just find that so interesting. I mean,
It was great, great talk. She went through all of them.
yeah, she sure did. Yeah, and I love that. But when asked, what's your weakness, Baba, he says that he has two, and he's gonna keep one a secret until he comes back.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Okay, let's talk about also your experience after the Mandali Hall. We spent some time in Mayor Baba's bedroom, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Yep.
Was that experience of Baba's bedroom a different kind of vibration and energy and experience than the Samadhi for you? And if so, why is that?
Yeah, I guess I think that it felt more like being with Baba. It felt more like Baba was sitting there with me rather than the feeling of being consumed.
So different.
Yeah, it's it's funny because I think that there are a lot of similarities, and so I'm reaching into my memory of that experience, and I think there are a lot of similarities, like kind of like well, first I remember bowing at the feet of his chair in Mandali Hall and having that feeling of being in the samadhi, and but then also feeling him sitting in that chair, and then again in his bedroom, maybe even more of the feeling of him being there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, beautiful. Vanessa, any questions about Marizad before we move on to some other topics? Because there's still more to the pilgrimage.
Yeah, I think I saw pictures of you guys go up on the Seclusion Hill, right?
That's right.
What was that like for you?
Seclusion Hill, it was it was great. I mean, one thing that happened, we went up on Seclusion Hill, and I think maybe it was Laurent. Somebody told me a story of someone spreading ashes on Seclusion Hill,
Yeah, I did.
and I remember thinking like, wow, I have Liz's ashes, um and I had wanted to bring them with, but I didn't that day. So I ended up asking uh, Daniel to, when he went back, because it was that day we went up on Seclusion Hill was the last day we were going to go to Marizad. So I asked Daniel to take some of Liz's ashes to spread on Seclusion Hill, um, which he did for me, and that was really great. He said that was a nice experience.
Awesome. Awesome.
Wait, and Liz is your mother-in-law?
That's right.
Okay.
Who had just passed.
So sweet.
She came to Baba. My experience of Liz was she was on fire for Baba right before she died. It was
Oh,
extraordinary.
how old was she when she died?
60, let's see, 63 maybe.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Marizod was also a positive experience. And then we had, do you remember we had meetings, the three of us, you and Daniel and I,
Mm-hmm.
about what we wanted to do and what we wanted to see, right? It wasn't just like already preset. We had options, right?
Yes,
Do you
right.
remember discussing all that?
Yeah, I remember we had a few moments where we sort of plotted out our pilgrimage.
And do you remember what we did besides Maribad and Marizod?
Yeah, of course. We went to Shirdi and Sakori,
Yep,
and we went to the Elora Caves,
that's right.
and
Can you share any of those experiences? What happened for you and what you experienced at those places? Obviously, much different than the Baba experiences of Maribad and Marizod, right?
right, yes, of course.
Yeah, and I'd specifically like to know if you felt like any different energies between, Sai Baba's tomb or Upasani's tomb and
Oh
Baba's.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah. So Sai Baba's tomb was high energy and very many people. And we
What do you
while we
mean
were
by very many? More than there was at the
oh
Maribad
yeah,
Samadhi?
oh yeah, like an absurd crowd. It was like,
What would be your guesstimate of the number of people at Sai Baba's?
oh man.
Well, Jack, you remember that the queue went. We were in the special queue. Do you
Yeah,
remember?
we had VIP passes and had to wait
Yeah, you have
like
to get VIP passes, or like a
hours.
6 hour, right? Like six
Yeah,
hour line.
yeah, right. And even with the passes, we sat in this holding room for probably an hour. We sat in there, and I just kept thinking, wow, we're still sitting here. And they had they had they had a video feed of Sai Baba's tomb playing on many screens in the room while we were waiting. And it didn't do it justice because it's kind of zoomed right up to the tomb. So you can only see the people close enough to reach out. And then you also see the two guys sitting there passing out the prasad.
Yeah, yeah.
And then eventually we were in the front of that room. We were at the beginning of the line. So we got to eventually they let us out and go down the hall. And we were with somebody that seemed to have been there before. So we followed him and we were walking very quickly to get to the next line. We thought that the faster we walked, the better, but by the time we got to the end, we waited in another line for maybe 20 minutes. Oh man.
And then
Eh.
what about when we turn the corner and we actually enter?
Oh
The,
yeah, when you actually walk in, you will not get through that room unless you're willing to push people because everyone else is going to be pushing their way in.
No, it's like a sea of humanity, just like being condensed to 6 lines between
Yeah.
metal, like you're going to Disneyland or something.
Yeah, like a chaotic Disneyland. And
and then
and I think if you're not ambitious enough, you will end up just standing there and no one's going to move you through the line for you. The line will move itself past you.
yeah,
Um
it was intense, right?
yeah, the other funny thing about that is there were um some smaller elderly women like holding on to my clothes to get like Indian women that knew the drill, so they recognized, oh, that guy's big, he'll push through the crowd, and so they grabbed on and followed me through the crowd.
That was your first time, and they're using you as a
Like
human
you had
shield.
a dama.
Yeah, right.
Well, talk about effort and grace. You probably got extra grace. You had a little, you're like a tugboat.
Right.
So I'm sure you'd never had an experience quite like that before.
No, absolutely not.
And
It,
then
and it was hard to take a moment to be with Sai Baba in that experience.
did you
And
feel his presence?
I think so. It's hard to say.
Hmm.
Definitely not the same way with Baba.
Different, right? Different energy.
Yeah, yeah, right, right.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to differentiate the energy that Sai Baba had there, as opposed to the humans that were surrounding, because there's so much human energy.
Well, what was the I mean, coming from the West, we don't really see a bunch of people like, with that much passion trying to like get into
Yeah,
bow, which is like basically laying our ego at the master's feet. So what kind of impression was that for you?
yeah, that's a great point, because I think that it's kind of heartwarming to see, because of that, that priority, that cultural priority of devotion.
Yeah.
And then Sakori was similar in the magnitude of energy, but it was very quiet.
How many people were in Sequoia? Do you remember?
Well, most of the time we were there, it was just us.
Yep.
But while we were there, another family came and went.
Yep. It was like a family of 7 or 8 Indian people who came and left.
Yep.
Yeah.
And and it seemed like people aren't really allowed to go into Upasani's samadhi, but the nuns that were there, Laurent asked them, and at first they were like, no, but then they thought about it, or eventually they let us come in, and we got to bow at the tomb. And that was intense. That was that crushing feeling again. That was emphasis on the crushing feeling,
Oh,
bowing at Upasani's tomb. Yeah, and it's very cool. His tomb is in a cage, like with bars around it, um, to represent the cage that he liked to spend his time in.
Sounds funny when we look at it from another person's perspective, doesn't
Yeah, right.
it? So then we had some time at the Elora Caves. Do you remember a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The main memory from that is uh sitting deep in the main largest temple, the Shiva temple, and sitting there in the corner of that room, and repeating the Om and feeling that resonant. And I remember feeling like I'm kind of claustrophobic, so being in there was a little nerve-wracking for me. But I remember feeling like, I guess, imagining the temple collapsing on itself and me being crushed in there, and just sort of feeling like I would be grateful for that, feeling like that would be a huge gift almost, if that had happened.
So was it a bit of a surrender to be in there?
Oh yeah, I think that's what that feeling was, right? Surrender.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then we went to some other caves too, not just the Shiva cave, right? We went
That's
to
right.
didn't we go to a Buddha cave?
Yep, we went to a Buddha cave with, like, a giant Buddha. Like, how tall was that thing? 30 feet
It
maybe?
was big. It was really big.
Yeah, that was really cool. Oh, and the tomb keeper sang for us, didn't he? Or
I think,
maybe a prayer.
yeah, I think he led a prayer or chant or something.
Okay,
Yep.
that's what it was.
Yep.
And then we took a tram down like a golf cart down to the furthest temple, which was a Jain temple.
Yep.
And that one had a lot of bats living in it. And it was unfinished, they said.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. I mean,
And then
all those temples, it's like a Indiana Jones movie exploring those temples.
Well, at some point you had your fill of the different caves and temples, right?
I suppose at some point we decided to get lunch and stop seeing more temples.
Yeah, and so coming back from that trip of Sakori, Shirdi, Lower Caves, and all that, back to the Samadhi and Mehrabad, was there any sense of like contrast or, you know, like a different understanding of what India was like or anything like that?
Well, yeah, well, it definitely felt like it always felt like coming home, coming back to the pilgrim retreat. And yeah, the contrast with going out, there, because at the retreat, it's all Baba lovers, and it's very quiet, like living out in the country. And when we would go on the expeditions to various places, it was always loud, except for when we were at Upasni's tomb shrine. But other than that, there were people everywhere, and things happening all over, which was exciting. It was cool because at the retreat you don't really get that sense of kind of the outside world of Indian culture. But then actually walking through streets, that was another outing we did, was to do some shopping at the bazaars. So walking through the street was a really cool experience, dodging motorcycles and things like that.
Vanessa, do you have any more questions? Because I've got one more question, and then I want to open it up for Diane and Terry and Ken and Ralph to ask questions.
Yeah, when you were in Mehrabad, there's always, I mean, I know you had your group with Laurent and the other young man that was there, but I'm sure you got to meet people at the lunches or the meals or whatever. What was your experience of just being there with these other pilgrims? I mean, and the conversations. I mean, did you end up having any like connections, or did you feel like Baba was present in that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to connect with other Baba lovers was really great, and I said earlier, I haven't had that opportunity much, so it was easy to get along with everyone. And it's funny how every Baba lover seems different, we all seem to have our own take on Baba. And so it's cool to see that. And the more time I spent talking to different people I met there, the more I was able to pick up on um their subtle differences and the nuances of how they organize their thoughts, whether or not it was intentional. I guess we all end up organizing our thoughts one way or another.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think one person I met there, Daniel Sanders, I've been in touch with him a bit. I'm really excited about a project he's working on, screenplay adaptation of Baba's treatment. I think that's what it's called.
Wow.
Yeah, so Baba lays out like a framework for a screenplay, and I had never heard that before, but I read that while I was there, and Daniel Sanders had told me about it, and so he has a screenplay that he's working on, and sent it to me to read, and I'm really excited about that.
Wow,
Awesome.
that's great.
Awesome.
What part
So
of the
my
world?
last question, then I want to let Diane and Terry and Ken and Ralph talk or ask questions, is It's kind of a two-part question. Imagine the people of the future listening to you, who aren't here with us today, but they will be, and then they'll be listening eagerly and interested in this. What would you say to somebody who's contemplating whether or not to go on a pilgrimage to Meribad? And the second part is anything else that you want to share, just be free, knowing that, this is being recorded.
Okay. I think anyone that's considering going on pilgrimage to Meribad should definitely do it. And my experience was really nice to have Laurent there because I knew I was with someone that knew what they were doing. And if you're the kind of person that likes that level of comfort, I would recommend, finding someone like that. I know Laurent's planning on offering that as I don't know what your what your schedule is going to be like if you're going to have like a regular pilgrimage, but that's something you were telling us about. You want to say something about that?
No. And then and just be free and share anything you want as a closing remark before we open it up.
Okay. Well, it was really great to go be there, and I can't wait to go back. And if you're interested in going, you should. And in addition to that, I know without a doubt that that feeling is accessible to all of us, whether or not we are at Baba's Samadhi, because his temple is the hearts of, his lovers. And that's what we are.
That's beautiful, Jay. That's beautiful. I saw Ken's hand go up first, and then Diane and Terry. Go ahead, Ken.
Hey, Jack.
Ken.
I'm Ken. I think maybe I did see your other talk, but my memory these days is not what it used to be. So, but thanks so much for sharing that. It really brought a lot back. And I was only in India in July on my first trip in 1975, the 50th anniversary of Baba's Silence. And a couple of weeks ago, I bought a ticket to go back this coming July.
Wow. For the
Wow.
100th.
The 100th and 50 years later for me. So
Wow.
I haven't been back since 2012, and a lot has changed since then. But of course, it sounds like the Samadhi hasn't changed. Of course, it's always an individual experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
But it was
Ken.
a 3-hour line for Silence Day. Huh? That will be different. You can read my story somewhere else if you're interested from then. But
Great.
yeah, I can't really think of any question. It just sounds like Laurent really showed you the highlights.
Yeah, definitely.
And you got to see a little of India. Yeah, really my experience was the same, going to Shirdi and et cetera. And just seeing the difference between a typical Hindu kind of cultural shrine and all that energy and Meribad, which is so unique.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thanks, Ken.
all those things you shared. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ken.
Diane and Terry.
I have two questions. One is you had mentioned that you were delayed 24 hours, but that you and Laurent arrived at Meribad at the same time. Did your delay help foster arrival at the same time, or
No, because I was supposed to arrive and spend an extra day with
the leisure
Laurent.
time?
Yeah, that's right. I was meeting Laurent in Mumbai, and we
Got it.
got to Meribad together because we drove together.
Thanks. My other question is a couple-fold. What part of the world do you live in?
Chicago.
Chicago. There used to be a strong Baba group there. Are you connected with anybody Baba-like there?
I am not. I have one connection. I haven't spoken to him much though. I met him one time when Laurent came to visit, but other than that, I have not connected with Baba lovers in Chicago.
They're there. It used to be a
Great.
really strong group.
Yeah, I have to find them.
I'm going to ask a question too. So tell me about your wife. Is she?
Yeah.
Is she?
Yeah, she sure
know
is.
what I mean?
He is.
Yeah, yeah.
He is.
She's coming to Baba too, or?
No, no, that was a joke.
I
Okay.
like to, something that I just said to her the other day. I feel like, sometimes I feel like she's a bit further along than I am, because I have to spend so much time thinking about Baba, and she's just so selfless without having to ever think about Baba. She loves looking at pictures. Her favorite Baba images to look at are when he's older, because he always seems so extra happy. She really loves that.
Hmm.
Awesome.
And do you have children?
We do not have children, but we live with her brother, her twin brother, who has special needs. So, um, unfortunately, their mom passed away, but Chelsea and I are taking charge and trying to give him the best life we can.
It's awesome.
Mhm. Thank you for that piece of your life. I appreciate it, along with the Baba stories.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, it's really, really nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And you picked a really good guide to take you on your
Totally.
first trip. I mean,
I know.
And we didn't have any Laurent with us. We didn't know what the hell we were doing.
but then we
didn't know anything.
but then we got picked up by Bill
Lapat, Cliff.
Oh, Bill's great. Bill's
Yeah.
great.
He took
Yeah.
good care of us.
He
Baba
was-
sent someone to us. Just to-
Good.
Thank you so much.
it is magic. And even though I've been with Baba long, I haven't been with Baba as long as the other people who are here. And I came as an elder, and so did Diane. But it's as thrilling to hear your story as it is to have a story. I just have to say that it was.
Wow.
I really thank you so much.
Can you go into the Samadhi now? Or
Yeah.
I know you can go in. So that's
Yeah.
That's still okay.
You can go in, you
Yeah.
just can't sit in there like we
Yeah.
used to. You know how you used to be able to meditate, like, or
Yeah.
whatever you wanted.
We don't know. We've heard.
So here's the thing. You could go in, and instead of laying down or putting your head at Baba's feet, you could sit down in front of Baba, but
Mhm.
then you're taking your turn by sitting.
Yeah,
Like you can't sit on the sides and just chill out in there.
just hang out. Mhm.
Yeah. Ken, I saw that you put your
Thank
hand back
you.
up.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. You said that was your first time around a lot of Baba people. So that means you
Mhm.
haven't been to other centers, to Myrtle Beach or.
That's right. I haven't been to Myrtle Beach yet. I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Very good.
We have
Yes,
a
you
really
were
nice
you were lucky
center.
to have Laurent. The first time I went by myself, and there were some adventures there.
I just want to say that we have a really great center here in Los Angeles, but we have
Oh,
a shared center in Ojai, which it's a really good trip when you're ready for it, I think.
great.
And we could be your guide, okay?
Great. Thank you. I'd love that. Yeah, no, I agree. I'm really lucky to have had Laurent, and simply put, I would still not have had a pilgrimage to see Baba there if it weren't for Laurent.
You would have done it, but probably later.
Yeah. And I guess it's one of those things where it's hypothetical. It's not reality. I think that we went because we were always going to go.
Hmm. We have a strong connection, Jack. So I promised Vanessa I would tell this story that I read only this year, actually, I think, which was surprising. I'd never seen this story. And Amrit was involved in this story too. Now it's a little bit mysterious how I came upon this story, but here's what happened. Somebody asked Baba for something. I don't even remember what they asked, but they were asking Baba, like, Baba, and asking Baba for this thing. And Baba told that person, go to my samadhi and ask me there. And then they did, because Baba told them to. And then it unfolded from there. So it was like, for me, when I heard this story, I was just going, what the heck is going on here? So it's almost like he had set up something there at the samadhi, because he did a lot of work. I don't know if you know this, Jack. Before the samadhi was even built, he had a pit dug, and he would go down in the pit and be in seclusion in the pit a long time before he passed away.
Wow.
And then after he finished the work in the pit, which was the seclusion work that he did there, then he had the samadhi built while he was alive. And he told his mandali, wherever I pass away, I don't care where it is. If I ever pass away, when I pass away, take my body and bring it to the samadhi. Like that was an order that he wanted to give his body. My experience, my interpretation is he wanted to give his body to humanity, and he had prepared the samadhi, and he even had the murals painted inside and everything before he passed away. All they really had to do was
He was in seclusion too, right? Inside he did seclusion work in there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he did seclusion in the samadhi after he built it. He did seclusion in the pit of where his body is before he built the samadhi.
Oh, well, I consider it the same thing, but nice.
Well, I'm precise, so I had to say that.
Okay, good.
But all they really had to do was get that marble put over him, because he had done all the rest of the work in creating the samadhi.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I heard that, and I was like, what? This is great. So Laurent, when you guys are over there, I sent him like, I don't know, at least 20 prayers for all these different people in my life to be read out in the tomb, because when I would go to the tomb, most of the time I felt like I was like, I don't know, I was in this relationship where I felt like Baba was scrubbing me, or like, and he was filling my cup up with his love. And then it was just, it was a lot. It's a lot of digesting and a lot of processing. And, but, I wasn't there, and I was able to just hand him the prayers. And so he read them out. But slowly I've had, like, all the prayers have been coming true. So I'm like, wow, this is an amazing new twist to the samadhi. I didn't know existed, and then I heard recently that, we all have guardian angels, and we all have this kind of hierarchy of spiritual, help, I guess, all ready to help us, but they won't help us unless we ask. And I'd spent like most of my life never really asking, for like, I thought it'd be better just to, be devoted and not ask for anything. But now I feel like my relationship shifted, in that, asking not only for myself, but for others is like an important part of the relationship. I mean, if I have parents, I'm going to ask them for like, help. I feel like if I'm going to be in a relationship of any intimate kind, I can't just pretend like, we're not in a partnership. So I'm going to ask my husband for help for things. Why wouldn't I ask, God? So, so yeah, that was a fantastic sort of, experience for me, but I thought I should definitely share it here.
What was
Thanks for
what was
sharing
the
that.
Amrit part?
The what part?
He said Amrit was part of the story.
Amrit.
Amrit.
Yeah.
I think Amrit's the one who explained to me that Baba had been asked for something, and that he redirected the person to ask the same thing at the samadhi.
Got it.
I think that's how that happened. I was shocked when I heard this story, because I'd never heard that before. I had heard something that Mani said, which I think is related, because I knew Mani. She was incredible. And she would ask certain pilgrims who came to Mehrabad and Merazad, she would say to them, pray for me. And sometimes they would be like, but you're Baba's sister. What are you talking about? And she's like, no, 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 no. And so she would want people to pray for her. And she said, and I'll pray for you. So she said, it's much more powerful if we pray for each other than if we're each praying for ourselves. And as Baba's sister, and Baba had said how close she was. I think he said in her next lifetime, she's going to be a perfect master or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was really fascinating to me, especially hearing that early on, that she wanted people to pray for her and she was praying for others, even though she was so close to Baba. It was incredibly fascinating to me.
And also I think, well, I mean, I had heard that an angel can't help us unless we ask for help. Like they're just kind of, witnessing, and they're dying to help us because that's their job. But if we're not asking for help, then they can't help us. So, I
Wow.
think Baba doesn't like, that story of Don.
Yeah, tell that.
I don't have all of it memorized like you do, but basically, Don had gotten to the point where, he was trying to kind of hide his finances and his sex life from God. He didn't want to involve God in those two subjects of his life. And finally, I guess he had made such a mess of both of them that he ended up going to Baba, and asking for help. But
You did it perfectly. That's exactly the story. Well, the punchline is, he said, and then Baba immediately helped both of those issues. They had a conversation about it, and Baba stepped up and stepped in. But Don said, Baba never, this is how Don would talk about it. Baba would never insert himself or inject himself or push his way into any part of your life. He waited to be invited in by you. I think it's in perfect alignment with what you're saying, Vanessa.
yeah, it's like the magic formula. It's like,
But then once you do invite him in, you got to buckle up, I think.
oh gosh. Well, I think this is the life to do it.
This is the life to do it.
It is.
Don't put it off till next lifetime.
No. I think,
Yeah.
once we get to the golden age, it's going to be, it's going to be different. It'll be easier.
Oh, then you reminded me of something else Mani said. She said, when I was there in the 80s, she had such an incredible way of communicating, by the way. But it was like, she would say, like, you see, in the future, it won't be like it is now, where we compete with each other. She said, that's going to all go away. But there will be competition, but it'll be competing with each other for opportunities to be of service. That's how she would talk about it. And it was like, she's like, you see, like, she would say that, like, how it's almost like she saw the future of how beautiful it would be and how the competition would shift from, getting a job and position and money and all this, and how we, in the West, we're definitely like all trying to get ahead, to how can we be of service to Baba. It's incredible. And she really saw it and believed it. It wasn't like she was saying, wouldn't it be wonderful? It wasn't like that at all. It was like, that's how it will be, is the vibe. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah. So instead of standing on the shoulders of others, we're all going to become like Padre, where we're just throwing our bodies down and like, step on my back, go ahead. Like,
Pukar.
I mean, Pukar was, Baba's bench, and whenever he needed a bench, he was a very big
Wow.
Indian guy.
Because Baba had the accidents, right? So he would walk, but he'd have a lot of pain. So he couldn't keep walking. He would have to rest. And if they would walk with Baba and he needed to rest, he'd he'd touch Pukar, and Pukar would get on his hands and knees so Baba could sit down on him. Can you
What a
imagine
great-
that blessing?
What a great job. Yeah.
What a great job. I know. I know. Well, Jack, this was incredible. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and your life to share with us. Please thank Chelsea for us. She's got to be around there somewhere for sharing you with us, because it was really inspiring and heartwarming to hear your experience of Baba. It's just incredible.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Jay Baba.
Hey,
Jai
Bob.
Baba. Jai Baba.
Avatar, Meher
Meher
Baba,
Baba
ki
ki
jai.
jai.
Avatar,
Meher
Meher
Baba
Baba,
ki jai.
Avatar,
Avatar
Meher
Meher
Baba,
Baba
ki
ki jai.
jai.
Woo!
Thanks.